Most people know the big WW2 planes, but this one was America's first jet, and barely anyone talks about it. The Bell P-59B Aerocomet was the United States' first jet aircraft, and that alone makes it a huge deal. The crazy part is, it was built in deep secrecy during World War II, so regular people had no idea what was being tested behind the scenes. On paper, this thing looked like the future. It had 2 early turbojet engines and was supposed to push America into the jet age, but real talk, being first does not always mean being the best. The engines were weak, the airframe was heavy, and the performance just did not hit like people hoped. So no, it never became a combat legend, but it still mattered big time. The P-59 helped train American crews for jet flying and gave the Army Air Forces priceless data for better jets that came later. So even if it never became famous, this plane helped open the door to America's jet future. This plane looked like somebody built a fighter backward, and honestly, that is why almost nobody outside aviation circles knows it. The Curtiss XP-55 Ascender was one of the weirdest American fighter experiments of World War II. This thing did not look normal at all. The engine pushed from the back, the main wing sat far to the rear, and a small front wing sat near the nose. So yeah, the whole plane looked like it was flying in reverse. The U.S. Army Air Corps wanted radical new fighter ideas, and the XP-55 was one of the boldest attempts. At first glance, it looked futuristic and kind of badass. But once testing started, the hype faded fast. Pilots and engineers found that its handling and performance were not good enough for combat, so instead of becoming a frontline fighter, it became more like a warning sign from history. Still, that is what makes it so interesting. The XP-55 is one of those hidden World War II planes that shows how far America was willing to go to chase the next big thing, even if the result turned out to be a total dead end. If this plane looks like science fiction, that is because it basically was. And no joke, it had one of the wildest cockpit ideas of the whole war. The Vultee XP-54 Swoosh Goose was one of the strangest American aircraft ever built during World War II. It had a twin-boom body, a pusher engine in the back, and a giant propeller spinning behind the pilot. But the real wild part was the cockpit. The pilot did not just climb in like normal. The seat actually lowered down like an elevator. The pilot sat in it, and then the seat lifted back up into the cockpit. That alone sounds insane, but it gets crazier. Its bailout system had to send the pilot downward first, so he would not get shredded by the rear propeller. The nose could also tilt, so the guns could aim higher or lower without changing the whole plane's angle. On paper, this aircraft looked super advanced, but in real life, the performance never matched the hype, and the project got canceled. Still, the XP-54 remains one of the most slept-on American WW2 aircraft ever built. This plane was supposed to be a fast fix for a wartime problem. Instead, it became one of America's most forgotten World War II fighter projects. The Fisher P-75A Eagle started with a serious mission. Early in World War II, the United States needed a powerful interceptor fast, so this aircraft was designed as a kind of shortcut to get there. Engineers tried to speed things up by using parts from other planes and pairing them with a very powerful engine. Sounds smart, right? Well, not exactly. Once testing began, the first prototypes showed disappointing performance. Then the mission changed too, from interceptor to long-range escort fighter, which made the whole project even messier. By the time the design was heavily reworked into the P-75A, the U.S. already had better options like the P-51 Mustang and the P-47 Thunderbolt. That pretty much ended the story. The big order was canceled and only a small number were ever built. So the P-75A Eagle was not a superstar, but it is one of those hidden World War II aircraft that shows how even high-priority wartime projects can still crash out. Not every forgotten World War II plane was a flashy fighter. Some of them launched straight off warships and quietly did the dirty work. The Curtiss SO-3C Seamew was one of those American World War II aircraft that barely gets mentioned today, even though it served a real job in the Navy. This was a scout observation float plane, which means it was built to help warships spot threats, scout areas, and keep eyes on what was happening around the fleet. It did not get the fame of the big fighters or bombers, but it was still part of naval operations. Navy historical records show Seamews being carried and launched from ships, including cruisers like USS Biloxi, and one record even mentions a Seamew stalling after launch from USS Montpelier. That tells you this was not just some paper design sitting in a hangar. It was out there doing a risky job. The Sea is the kind of plane most people scroll right past, but without aircraft like this, fleets would have been a whole lot blinder in wartime. This plane looked ready for war, but history hit it with the worst timing possible. The consolidated TBY Sea Wolf is one of those American World War II planes that feels almost forgotten on purpose. It was a real Navy torpedo bomber, not just some sketch on paper, and it was meant to be part of America's wartime striking power. But here is the rough part. The TBY never saw combat. Development dragged on, redesign slowed everything down, and by the time production really got moving, the war was basically running out of road. That is brutal because the plane was built for battle, but never got its real shot. Today, when people talk about Navy torpedo bombers from World War II, they usually bring up the Avenger. The Sea Wolf gets left in the shadows. And that is exactly why it is so interesting. It was there, it was real, and it was ready, but timing completely wrecked its chance to make history in combat. That makes the TBY Sea Wolf one of the most overlooked U.S. aircraft of the war.